Snow fell in slow, steady flakes that evening, softening the edges of the world and muting every familiar sound. Streetlights glowed like distant moons, their light bending gently through the cold air. The woman walked alone, her boots pressing shallow prints into the fresh powder, her breath rising in pale clouds before disappearing into the dark. Winter had a way of making even ordinary walks feel introspective, as though the quiet invited memories and thoughts she usually kept busy at bay. She sensed him before she saw him, a faint scuff behind her, uneven and hesitant, followed by the smallest sound, a quick, sharp breath that didn't belong to the wind. When she turned, her eyes fell on a tiny puppy standing several steps behind her, his fur dusted white, his legs trembling as if they might fold beneath him. He was impossibly small for the cold, ribs faintly visible beneath damp fur, ears pinned back against his head, as though the night itself frightened him. Her first instinct was concern tempered with caution. Stray animals were not uncommon in winter, and kindness sometimes invited trouble. She crouched slightly and waved a gloved hand. "Go on," she said softly, pointing back the way she had come. "You shouldn't be out here." The puppy didn't move. He only looked at her, dark eyes wide and searching, tail giving a weak, uncertain wag that seemed to cost him effort. She stood and resumed walking, telling herself that he would turn back once she was gone. Yet after a few steps, the sound returned. Small paws crunching in snow, always behind her, never quite catching up. When she stopped again, he stopped too, lowering his body close to the ground, as if unsure whether he was allowed to exist in her space at all. There was no begging in him, no desperate lunging or barking, just patience, thin and fragile, stretched taut by the cold. As they moved deeper into the neighborhood, the streets emptied. Houses grew darker, windows shuttered against the night. Snowbanks rose higher along the sidewalks, carved by plows into pale walls. The silence felt heavier here, pressing in on her ears, until even her own footsteps sounded intrusive. The puppy's breathing grew more labored, his gait uneven. Yet, he didn't fall behind. Each time she slowed, he lifted his head, watching her with quiet urgency. Something shifted inside her then. Lost animals wandered aimlessly, but this puppy walked with direction. When she turned a corner, he followed without hesitation. When she paused, he waited, gaze fixed not on her hands or her face, but on the path ahead. It was as though she were not the destination, only a means. The thought unsettled her, stirring a curiosity edged with unease. She tested the feeling, deliberately taking a different street than usual. The puppy hesitated for the first time, stopped short, and whined, a soft, broken sound that barely carried through the snow. He took a few steps back the way they had come, then looked at her again, pleading without sound. Her heart tightened. She sighed, turned back, and the puppy immediately resumed his place behind her, relief evident in the renewed steadiness of his steps. The cold deepened as they walked. Wind slipped through her coat seams, biting at her skin, while the puppy's shivers grew more pronounced. She worried about how much longer his small body could endure this. Several times she considered scooping him up, ending whatever strange journey he seemed intent on. But each time she bent toward him, he stepped just out of reach, not frightened, only insistent on movement. Their path led away from houses and toward an older part of town, where trees stood bare and tall, their branches etched black against the sky. Snow lay untouched here, smooth and deceptively peaceful. The puppy moved faster now, despite his fatigue, his nose close to the ground, as if following a scent only he could read. The woman felt her pulse quicken, awareness sharpening with every step. She realized then that she had stopped thinking of him as a stray. He felt more like a messenger, small and determined, carrying a burden too heavy for his size. The bond forming between them was quiet, but undeniable, built not on trust earned over time, but on shared motion through the cold. She had chosen to follow, and in doing so, had accepted a responsibility she did not yet understand. At the edge of the trees, the puppy finally slowed. He looked back at her, tail giving one faint wag, then continued forward. The woman followed, her boots sinking deeper into the snow, heart heavy with anticipation. Whatever waited ahead, she sensed, was not meant to be faced alone. And so, in the hush of falling snow and breath shared between human and animal, she kept walking, guided by fragile paws and an unspoken promise that the night was leading them somewhere it mattered to arrive. The trees closed around them, their bare branches creaking softly as wind passed through, scattering snow in faint veils that caught the dim light. The puppy slowed to a careful walk, his earlier urgency tempered by exhaustion. Yet he never stopped moving forward. His small body leaned into each step, as though driven by something deeper than instinct. The woman followed closely now, no longer questioning her choice, her focus fixed on him and the quiet resolve he carried. They reached a shallow clearing where the snow lay uneven, disturbed in places as if something had been dragged or shifted. The puppy stopped at the edge and sat, his chest rising and falling too fast for comfort. He looked up at her, then turned his gaze toward a low mound near the base of a fallen tree. He didn't bark or whine. He simply waited, eyes steady, asking her to see what he could not fix alone. She moved closer, each step heavy with a sense of knowing she could not yet name. Kneeling, she brushed snow away with her gloved hands. Beneath the cold crust was a piece of fabric, thin and worn, stiff with ice. As she cleared more, her breath caught. A small shape lay beneath. A second puppy, curled unnaturally still, fur rimmed with frost. The world seemed to narrow to that quiet space between her hands and the snow. The puppy behind her let out a sound then, not loud, but raw. It was the sound of something too young to understand loss, yet old enough to feel it fully. She turned and saw him standing again, trembling harder now, his eyes fixed on the motionless form. In that moment, everything became clear. He had not been following her home. He had been leading her here, carrying the weight of something he could not abandon. She reached out and touched the still puppy gently, hoping for warmth, for movement, for any sign that the cold had not already claimed too much. There was none. The realization settled slowly, painfully. This was what the snow had been hiding. Not cruelty, not malice, but the quiet aftermath of survival, gone wrong. One had endured just long enough to ask for help. The other had not. The woman sat back on her heels, the ache in her chest spreading until it felt difficult to breathe. She had no words that fit the moment, no actions that could undo it. The surviving puppy pressed against her leg, seeking contact now that his task was done. His small body shook, not just from cold, but from the release of tension held too long. She rested a hand on his back, feeling the rapid beat of his heart, grounding herself in the life still present. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them. Even the wind quieted, as if granting space for grief that needed no witness. She stayed there longer than she realized, hand moving slowly over the puppy's fur, offering warmth through the glove, through intention, if nothing else. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing briefly, then opening again to check the place where his companion lay. When she finally stood, it was with careful purpose. She wrapped the small, lifeless body in the fabric she had, uncovered, cradling it with the tenderness reserved for something loved. The surviving puppy watched, calm now. Sadness settled deep and heavy within him. There was no panic left, only acceptance, and a quiet need for closeness. She knew she could not leave things as they were. She carried the wrapped bundle a short distance away to a place beneath the tree where roots curved protectively around the earth. There, she laid it down and covered it with snow, shaping the mound gently, deliberately. It was not a solution, not justice, but it was care. And sometimes care was all that could be offered. When she turned back, the puppy stood waiting, snow clinging to his whiskers. She knelt again, this time without hesitation. and gathered him into her arms. He stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, his head tucking beneath her chin. His warmth was faint, but real, a fragile ember she was suddenly determined to protect. She adjusted her coat, shielding him from the wind, feeling the trust he placed in her settle like a vow. The walk back felt different. The forest no longer seemed ominous, only solemn. Her steps were slower, mindful of the small life she carried. The puppy did not struggle. He rested, eyes half closed, breathing evening out as warmth replaced cold. With each step, the weight in her chest shifted, making room for resolve alongside sorrow. By the time the first houses reappeared through the trees, snow still falling steadily, the night felt changed. Loss had been revealed, but so had courage. The puppy had crossed a frozen world alone, not for himself, but for another. She held him closer, understanding that what bound them now was not the tragedy they had witnessed, but the compassion that followed it. When she reached her door, she paused, looking down at the small face nestled against her. The puppy opened his eyes and met her gaze. Something softer there now, something like relief. Inside, warmth waited, and beyond that, time to heal. She stepped forward, carrying him with care, knowing that heartbreak had led her here. But kindness would guide what came next.